Hello and welcome to the Danesh Show. I'm Eva Danesh. Today we are joined by Lori Greene Gordon. Gordon is a current Beverly Hills City Planning Commissioner and served as its chair 2 years ago. She's a lifelong resident, an alumna of our public schools, and a businesswoman. She's currently running for one of the 2 seats for our Beverly Hills City Council. So Lori, thank you so much for joining me here today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So today I'd like to start talking about a little bit about your personal background and then moving on to what expertise you can bring to our City Council. So to start off, can you tell me a little bit about how your family arrived to our city of Beverly Hills?
Well, it's kind of an interesting story. The day of my kickoff, which was January 5th, would have been my parents' 73rd wedding anniversary. And what was special about that to me was the fact that as they were dating, they used to come to Beverly Hills. They used to go to the fountain, the electric fountain, which had the lights in those days. And they used to come and they dreamt someday of moving to Beverly Hills. It took, about 20 some years. In 1969, we moved in. So I actually was not born in Beverly Hills. I was just adjacent, went to West Hollywood Elementary School. But then when we moved here, I enrolled at El Rodeo. And I graduated from El Rodeo and then went to Beverly Hills High School. And it was really the greatest move that my family ever made. And it's something that we've been in. I have 2 brothers, both of whom live here in Beverly Hills. And my husband and my 2 children, my daughters, went through Hawthorne and Beverly Hills High School. And so we really feel like we were a very, very tight-knit Beverly Hills family.
And what does Beverly Hills mean to you?
Beverly Hills is home. I mean, I think the thing we have to really think about is you hear about, people use the term Beverly Hills to refer to glamour and glitz and all kinds of things that when they put the imprimatur Beverly Hills on something, it means something else. That's why we have businesses that say Beverly Hills and they're nowhere near Beverly Hills because they want that impression. But I think for those of us who've lived here for many, many, many years, most of our lives, to us it means home. And it means the kind of environment. That's why I've been very, very proactive in the years that I've been involved in many aspects of the city to make sure that this is the place that people want to live and it's a special place for residents because that's what it's all about to me.
And speaking more to your background, you and your family are very musical. You play the harp, your brothers play a lot of instruments. Mm-hmm. Can you tell me what music has done to connect you and your family and just to connect our world in general?
Well, I think music is so special and so important. I grew up in a musical family. My uncle was a symphony conductor, an orchestra that was known as the Junior Philharmonic Orchestra. He conducted it for 72 years until his passing. And my brother took over the baton, and now he conducts his own orchestra, the Los Angeles Lawyers Philharmonic. And of course, I play the harp. So I've been playing the harp with the orchestras for a number of years. I play occasionally. You'll see me at the Peninsula Hotel playing for tea, which I always love doing. So I'm a musician, but that I think brings you soul. It brings you heart and it brings you soul and it makes you a real person. And that's why music is so important to me. My daughter Natalie, who is a KBEV alum, is a very, very accomplished harpist. My other daughter, Victoria, is a very talented singer. And so music is something that keeps our family together. And I'll tell you, in 2014, when the city was celebrating its 100th anniversary, I co-chaired the Centennial Concert celebration, which was on the 100th anniversary day, January 28th, 2014, exact day. We had a big concert, sold out at the Saban Theater. It was
wow.
Open. It was open to the residents at no charge, so selling out was easy. But we got more than 1,800 people in that auditorium. We had the symphony orchestra, my brother's orchestra, but we also had so many celebrities. We had Betty White come. She's an alumna of Beverly, and she sang our fight song from Beverly Hills High School at this event. And we had Florence Henderson, we had Pat Boone, we had Richard Simmons. Anyone who was involved with Beverly Hills, we had at that event. And then we played music of composers that were all formerly Beverly Hills residents. So we had the Gershwins, and we had Cole Porter, and we had Richard and Robert Sherman from Mary Poppins fame, the Sherman brothers. They're also alumni of this school.
Wow.
And they grew up here too. And so Richard came and conducted the music, I believe, from Mary Poppins, or It's a Small World, one of them. And so, yeah, music just brings you all together.
So can you tell me what inspired you to run for a seat on our city council?
Absolutely. First of all, as you know, I've been on the Planning Commission for the past 5 years. And you gain a lot of experience on the Planning Commission. It's probably the most significant training ground of any of our commissions because you really get to deal with areas for the entire city and you get to make final decisions. They're not just advisory. Sometimes they are to the city council if it depends on changing laws and ordinances and things like that. But you know, if we're dealing with an issue in planning where somebody wants to make to get some kind of a permit for building something that would not necessarily be in code, those are final decisions. So it's a training ground. And I looked at what was going on in our city, and we do have an election now that has two incumbents who were elected in 2011. And in 2015, I made note of the fact, just when I was getting on the Planning Commission, that nobody wanted to run against them. And I thought, this is very interesting. They canceled the election. So in 2017, when they had the opportunity of deciding how they were going to handle creating an even year election process for our city, they had a variety of options. They could have, for example, had the election in 2019 for a 5-year term for new candidates, which would have been what would have given the voters the opportunity to make those choices. But instead they said, no, we're going to take the extra year. That's the most expeditious thing that they could do. So they've been in office for 9 years. And I said, well, someone has to run. That was literally my philosophy. Someone has to run in this election. And believe it or not, there are 5 candidates on the ballot, 1 write-in. And I will be honest and say that of all the candidates, I'm the only one that is really mounting a serious enough campaign to get elected. They aren't campaigning in terms of spending money for things, and elections cost money, and so you have to be mindful of that. So I feel it's my civic duty. I feel it's my responsibility to bring change, and they've served well. But the first thing that I'd like to do if I'm on the city council is to introduce a 2 consecutive term amendment for serving on the city council. So if you've served 2 terms and you want to come back, take a 2-year break and then come to the next election cycle and run again. But give new voices an opportunity to come up with new ideas, and I think that's so important.
And can you tell me a little bit about your history in public service, or when you maybe started to get involved in politics?
Well, it goes way back. I was here at Beverly High, and I was one of the students for a candidate you probably have only heard of in history books, George McGovern, who ran in 1972 against Richard Nixon. And I was actually, in my senior polls, I was voted biggest politician. The gentleman that was voted biggest politician along with me became the mayor of Santa Cruz, actually.
Oh, wow.
Don Lane. So it's kind of an interesting.
You guys are both going on to great things.
Yeah. So then when I got to UCLA, I worked for Jerry. Oh, I met Jerry Brown while I was here at Beverly. I was his first volunteer in his gubernatorial campaign in '74. I'd go to his office in Century City, which was right around the block from here, and I would go after school and I would work for him. So, from my work for McGovern, my work for Jerry Brown, by the time the election in 1975 rolled around for school board, I said, there's a need for a young person, and then I was very young, there's a need for a young person to be on our school board. This is before the student board member. They didn't have one then. And I said that sometimes young people have ideas that could benefit especially the schools. So I ran. There were 13 candidates running. I came in 6th out of 13, which tells you a lot about my ability to really, get people to hear what I had to say. And from that point forward, that was the beginning of my political involvement. I worked on many, many campaigns for city council, school board, and it's only until I got on the Planning Commission that I thought of my own run again so many years later.
And what advice do you have for other high school or college students who might be interested in participating in civic activism?
Get involved at any level you can be involved in. I seized every opportunity I could. Of course, you find the candidate that you like, that you think aligns with your philosophies, and especially in this environment today, there are so many young people who feel helpless. The first thing I do say that I think is important is sometimes almost grabbing for the national level is daunting, because things have changed so much since I was a volunteer in my time. Back in 1972, literally volunteers were sealing envelopes and putting stamps on letters, because that's how we communicated with people. It's so different today. So, I often feel that getting involved at the lowest level you can start at your city council level, because you can affect direct change here that sometimes would be much, much harder to do. And I'm not saying you shouldn't try, but sometimes this level is really a great stepping stone, a great place to start. So I'm very encouraging of it.
And switching gears a little bit, you are also a businesswoman for your daily life. Can you tell me what business you own and manage and how you've gone about that?
Of course. Well, I have my MBA from UCLA. It's called the Anderson School today. And I've been in business for nearly 40 years. When I left business school, I started to work in family business. We were originally my family for 90 plus years was in the wholesale hat business, men's hats. My grandfather came from Russia. He was a cap maker. And he came with one thing only. I mean, the clothes on his back and a little tool that was about the size of this that you would mold a cloth on to make caps. And he came to this country and did that. And then from that, it grew into let's sell these caps. Let's sell them wholesale and let's make different kinds of hats. So it was a hat business. We did it for 90 years. Men don't wear hats as much. Things have changed. So while we were doing that, we were also investing with, it was originally my grandparents, my parents, my brothers and myself. Well, now it's my brothers and myself, and my daughter Natalie also works in our business. And we work in commercial real estate. We've really transferred everything into real estate. Basically commercial storefront real estate that we own, we manage, and we're very hands-on, so I do that.
And how does that knowledge transfer into your position on the Planning Commission?
Oh, well, that was, I think, one of the reasons I was asked to be on the Planning Commission. I applied to be on the Planning Commission. There were, I think, 11 candidates who applied when I applied that time, and I got the spot. And the truth of the matter is, it's my understanding of construction. I mean, I can take a look at a set of plans and I can read them, which is an important thing to do when you're on the Planning Commission, because they give us a set of plans all the time. And, it's not just that I understand what makes, business work. I think a lot of things sort of work together in the job that I do on the Planning Commission. And I have the skills because of my experience. I'm the only candidate, if I would be on city council, I'd be the only city council member who has real business experience. For 40 years, I understand how to make a payroll. I understand how to work within a budget. And I think that is so important when you're dealing with public money. And to that degree, unfortunately, no other council member today has that experience. And I think you have come from a wide variety of experiences, but this is an important one that we have to have. So for that reason, I am the only candidate that's endorsed by all three treasurers, our current treasurer, Howard Fisher, and the two former treasurers, Joan Seidel and Elliot Finkel. And that's an important thing because of my business background.
And you served as chair on the commission between 2017 and 2018. Can you tell me a little bit about the skills you developed by doing that and maybe what barriers you had to overcome?
Well, first of all, it was an exciting time. We had a lot of interesting developments that were happening. We had my very first meeting as chair was in the council chambers, and it was a very contentious issue with a condominium project at 9200 Wilshire Boulevard, which is just beginning to go up now. And the developers at the time wanted to turn it into a 90-unit apartment house instead of a 54-unit condominium. And the people in the community were very concerned about that. Times have changed a little bit even since then. We have to look more at developing apartments and developing the kinds of housing that we need, and we can talk about that. But at that time, it was a kind of a key moment. And I felt very proud of the fact that I, as the chair, was able to work with both the community and with those developers to make it a project that was acceptable on both sides. And that, to me, is the key in anything you do, is negotiation, is being able to work with people and say, look, you're not going to get everything you want. You're not going to get everything you want. But together, we can get something that will be acceptable. And that's what you have to be able to do.
And you said negotiation is a big thing. You are, being a powerful person yourself, you are also a woman. You are the only woman when you were chair, and you are currently still the only woman on the commission. Can you tell me how that experience has been for you? Maybe some of the barriers you had to break down.
Well, there are barriers. I remember early on in my time on the Planning Commission, I was invited to lunch by the chair at the time, and he said to me, "This is the way we do things." And I thought that was interesting. And we speak as one voice. And I said, well, if we don't agree, why do we speak as one voice? It was some interesting times, and it was a little bit of a I won't say learning curve, but it was a little bit of an interesting thing for me because I wasn't used to. As a woman, I don't play the woman card ever. I just know that being a woman in a situation where you're dealing with all men in a thing, in a something that is traditionally a male area of, land use is not a very sexy topic, and it's not something that, most women say, oh, wow, I want to go talk about land use today. But if you have the understanding, you have the ability, you have the intelligence, I've often been told by many people that, they hear what I have to say and I make sense. And as a woman, sometimes we bring skills to the table that are, just those qualities that we can distill the information. I do a lot of homework. Nobody researches and does homework more than I do on the Planning Commission. We get these packets that are literally this thick. Sometimes we get them this big if it's an EIR. And I read every page and I look at it and I take notes and I put it together and they all look at me like, why are you doing this? Because they don't see it as the same way. But to me, it's all about the research and the work that you do before you get there, just like what you do before we got to this interview. And that's something I think that might be a woman's skill that's very important to add in.
And speaking to your vision for the future, one of the things you learn on the Planning Commission is really how to organize our city. So in your perspective, what do you think that our brick and mortar stores can do to work alongside moving into the 21st century and stores online?
Okay, well, first of all, I think we have to understand something about the Planning Commission, which unfortunately I've only learned after I've been on the Planning Commission. I tend to nickname it the Reaction Commission. We really don't, unfortunately, get to do the kinds of planning that I think are very important for a forward-looking city. So that's something that it bothers me, because what we get a lot of developers who, we right now have a 3-story, 45-foot height limit. That is what is written in our general plan. Nobody likes that. No developer wants that, because if they spend a lot of money on a piece of property, the first thing they'll say is it does not pencil out in order to just keep at those limits. And I respect that. So right away, they come in and I want it taller, I want it denser, I want, they always have wants, they have wants. So the key is to really work out what is appropriate for each individual area. There's different parts of the city and different needs in this city. So I think, and there's just so much to talk about this, but for example, mixed use is something that we're looking at very seriously on the Planning Commission. And of course, if I were on council, that's something I would certainly be in favor of, because that is going to bring the kind of retail in that will enable people, I call it villages within our village, to create smaller areas in the city where people can live, where people can have their essential needs and some other their fun things in that area, so they don't have to get in their car and drive somewhere. They can walk to it, or they can bike to it, or they're taking public transit and getting to it. These are things that I think are very, very important, and we need to do that. As far as I think you mentioned, the shrinking retail environment, well, I'm really surprised, because we have a lot of empty storefronts. We have a number, if you see on Beverly Drive, and not as much on Rodeo, but a couple, but a few different ones, and they're owned by a few different entities, a few different family companies and things like that. And for some inexplicable reason, they say, what are we going to do about the vacancies on Beverly? What are we going to do about these things? And ironically, they're not looking for new plans, because it's these very same people, these very same developers and property owners who own this land, who own this property, who do not want to see me get elected, who formed a pact that says Beverly Hills United for Bossy and Gold, because they want to keep the status quo. So I don't know. I want to know why it is. On one hand, they say, well, we need to find things to put into our city. On the other hand, they want to keep the status quo. They've raised over $85,000 in order to do it. They're putting out all kinds of mailers. It's the first time in the history that I have worked in Beverly Hills that we have ever had a group of special interest money, 10 people, 10 groups, put in over $85,000 in order to defeat one particular candidate. It's shocking to me, really. It's something that when I was a young person, and it was always about the money. We can't have this kind of influence. So it's really kind of shocking. And I really think we need to see what it is about these businesses. Why don't they want to fill their properties? What are they keeping them vacant for? That's really important to me. And because I think that we as consumers, as residents, want to have a vibrant business community. We want to go, my dream is to have a committee that's formed of one council member, one member of the real estate landlord community, one member of the realtor community, and one member of the Chamber of Commerce. I want that committee to be proactively searching for the kinds of experiential businesses and the kinds of different businesses, not mall businesses, but businesses that could be only in Beverly Hills, that maybe they're in another country or maybe they're in another city in this country, something that we could bring to our city so that we can have those businesses make our streets vibrant. And I don't know why they don't want this, but they don't. So I'm pushing for it. I hope the residents want that too, because I think as residents, we want to have a vibrant, walkable business community.
And what to you is the importance of being so proactive, especially when you're a leader, whether it's on the commission or of the city or at your school?
What do I see as
being proactive? Why is that so important?
Well, look, I think that everybody can sit back and can say, well, this isn't working out, and I don't really like this, and, geez, and they can complain about it. A lot of people can sit back and complain. But unless you're willing to get up and do it, the first proactive thing you do is vote. That's number one. Anyone who complains about anything and has not voted, as far as I'm concerned, has no right to complain. So that's number one. It's the number one most important civic duty there is. But then you can get involved in so many other ways. And I like to see people get involved because what that means is it's a broader cross-section of our city. That my campaign has I consider to have a very good broad section in terms of ages and all, but there are a number of people, the most interested and active people, I hate to tell you, are like 80 and above. I'm not kidding you. I mean, I have many people who are active in my campaign who are senior citizens, and yes, they have more time maybe than people that are busy raising their families, but they care. And caring is something that is so important. And just being proactive is saying, I'll help do this. I'll try. That's so important.
And another issue present in our city is that a lot of aging people are unable to really stay in Beverly Hills because of rising prices, and a lot of younger families who want to move into our district for our schools or just for the amazingness of our city are unable to do so. How would you react to that problem?
Well, first of all, I don't know if you realize that 1 in 9 households in Beverly Hills is under the poverty line. It averages about $14,000 a year. I mean, which is an unbelievable concept. That's 1 in 9 households. Most of them are senior citizens, okay? So they really are at the most severe disadvantage if they lose their housing because they want to take an apartment building and turn it into something else, and they get relocation fees and they get those kinds of things because that's what the RSO does allow for. But it's not a good situation, and so what we need to do is because of the need of the increase of housing that is going to be mandated by our state. And I think you've probably heard something called the RHNA numbers, the Regional Housing Needs Assessment, which is our state telling us what we need to add in terms of housing over the next 8-9 years so that we can meet the quota that they set for us. And that's over 3,100 units, which is an unbelievable amount. So I look at it and I say to myself, you can complain or you can do something about it. And doing something about it is being proactive and saying, we're going to turn this into an opportunity to enable our seniors to find the kinds of housing that would be suitable for them now. They don't need a 1,000 square foot, 1-bedroom apartment. Many seniors have downsized significantly, so if they could get a 600 square foot apartment that suits their needs, that would be suitable. But we don't allow for that in the city now. We have to change that. So I think there are many places, many ways that we're going to carve out senior housing. But even more important than that, seniors are important, and we have to preserve their rights to live here. But we also have to find ways of encouraging and enabling our young people like you. When you go to college and you come home, if you want to stay in Beverly Hills as your own independent resident, you've got to be able to find a place to live. And that's the thing. We need to have apartments. And as a starting apartment, if you could find a 600, 650 square foot apartment in Beverly Hills that you could walk to the subway or you could walk to businesses of your needs, you wouldn't even necessarily have to have a car. I mean, these are things I think you or maybe friends of yours would want to do. And I think we have to do it, and we have to do it now.
And another part of your campaign is really cutting fees. One of the most notable ones is parking permits. Those, as you've said, the prices range and it's not really fair in your perspective. Can you speak a little bit more to that?
Well, I discovered something early on, and there's different zones in the city, and I don't live in a permit parking area, but some people that do came to me with this idea and said, why am I paying $35 a car to be able to park in front of my own house? And I said, that makes, and the reason that is important is because all that money goes into our city's general fund. Our city's general fund is this giant pot where all the money from fees and taxes and business licenses and all the things go into this general fund, and it's spent at the discretion of the city council. So I started looking at that, and I inquired, and I found out that just the permit parking fees are raise about $750,000. $750,000 to the city. The purpose of a fee is supposed to be to replace the cost of what it would take to administer the fee. So if we have to hire someone in the city to hand out parking permits, then but they're not making $750,000, so that money is somehow something unusual about that. So what I was saying is, yes, we need permits in certain areas because the parking situation is tough, but if you're a resident, you should be allowed to have a permit without this charge or with a nominal charge. Because what happens is this money goes into the general fund pot, and then the city council uses it in a discretionary way. And the first thing I point up to people that drives me nuts, that people understand, is the Cannon Drive mural, for example. The Cannon Drive mural is something that was put in because of Metro. The wall was put in, a sound wall, to protect the businesses on Cannon Drive, which I respect. Metro paid for that. Metro also paid to have it painted in the Metro pattern, which is those color blocks with pictures of Beverly Hills scenes on it. They paid for that, and it was there. But it wasn't good enough. The city council decided to hire an artist to do a mural that will be torn down, so it's not going to be a permanent installation, but it'll be there for a few years. And that was over $265,000, $75,000, something like that, plus a party that they had. I've been told it's been in excess of $300,000 to put that all together. And what if, as someone had suggested to me, we even invited the students from Beverly High, the art students, to come and paint that mural? Why did we have to do that? These are the kinds of things, when I say people are paying for these fees, the city council is dispensing them this way, we have to relook at these fees. Water's another one that concerns a lot of people. We have to look at these fees, and then we have to look at how the city council spends them. And I am all for the fiscal responsibility of our council members, and that's what I want to bring to city council, is looking at things. Maybe $300,000 on this mural and party wasn't the best idea.
And going back to the Metro a little bit, that is coming to our city in a number of years. So what do you think the benefits will be to having a Metro coming through our city?
I think there are many benefits. I think that people focus on the liabilities. The first thing people focus on is potential for crime, potential for bringing in people that they're concerned coming to the city. Again, I'm an optimist. I'm a glass half full kind of girl. So I look at it and say, I think it's exciting. I've ridden the Metro myself, around Normandy, Western, those stops. I think it's a great opportunity for the city. I think we need to find ways to have multimodal transportation in this city. People cannot always expect to continue to stay in cars with the amount of gridlock that we have on our streets at any given time of day. So we need to find ways to get people out of their cars, walking, bicycling, moving around. Shuttles. I think shuttle buses are so essential. One thing I would propose, and I've said it many times, I'll propose it to the school board again, is that we need to have a shuttle bus system to take the kids from their home schools to the middle school and possibly even the high school. So the people aren't, the high school has more kids driving, I know, but we need to be able to cut down on the car trips because the traffic is horrible. And the parents, if they could at least get their kids to one school, maybe walk them to their home school if they're close enough. And then the shuttle picks them up and takes them to the middle school. That would be a dream system. It would cut back on so much traffic. So I think there's many things that we have to look at in terms of transportation, the Metro being just one of them. And yes, it's uncomfortable. Yes, the building of it is going to be horrific for the next few years. No one is happy about that aspect of it, but like anything else, construction ends and the project begins. And when the project begins, I hope it brings some positive things to our city.
And on the note of our schools, as you said, you came to our schools, your daughters went to our schools. What do the schools really provide to our community?
Everything. I said this last night. We had a forum, and one of the things I said, because I was the one of the leaders of the committee that brought forth the increase of the JPA back in 2008, 2009, when my kids were in the schools, and we felt the need that the city has a responsibility to the schools. I firmly believe that, because we are one. When people talk about why they moved to Beverly Hills, it's a three-part thing. It's police, fire, and schools. And now people say, well, it's police and fire. And I say, no, it's police, fire, and schools. Because, first of all, we have a fabulous school board who's done a terrific job, turning around the district in just a very short time with the advent of the middle school. And of course, I'm the only candidate, I'm sure you're aware of, I'm the only one who's been endorsed by all 5 of the school board members, because they look to me for a change in the relationship, in the attitude between the city council and the school district. You know, it's always an us against them kind of concept, and it has to be us working together. So I am all for, as much as we in the city can provide legally in terms of what the JPA's arrangement is, you know, in terms of what we give them for what they give. You know, it's a complex arrangement. But I think it's very important that we do that. I think it's important that we look at ways that we can increase enrollment to get people to come back to our schools if they've gone for some reason. I think the construction is going to end at some point again, and that's going to be a fabulous, you know, thing for our schools. I cannot wait until the auditorium's back online. I can't tell you how important that is for our community to have it. It'll be the center. I look at the Beverly Hills High School auditorium as really the center of our city, because the Wallace is a great theater. I love it, but it's only 500 seats. And the Saban is a wonderful facility, but it's got issues with parking, and you know, so it can't be, and it's not a city facility, but this is something that the schools and the city can work together on. I think it's going to be phenomenal. So I am 100% standing behind our schools and with our schools in solidarity.
And with police and fire, they are such incredible parts of our city. How can we ensure that they will always be supported and have all they need to make sure we're safe?
Well, you know, I just had coffee with the police chief this morning, and I assured her that if I'm on council, that I will do everything I can. The most important things to me, if you haven't gotten this out of me yet, is really the nuts and bolts issue of running our city. A city council's job is to set policy and to make sure that things are run in a way that the city is run efficiently. You know, that your water turns, when you turn on your faucet, your water goes on. Your trash is picked up. Your city is safe. It's not about creating events and parties. Yes, there's some aspect of marketing of our city that's important, but it's not just about this sort of gloss of celebration, because celebration is wonderful if everything else is done properly. But right now, I think there are people that come to me in the community and say they're concerned about certain issues, and I try to address that. And I told the police chief this morning, as I would tell the fire chief if I sat down with him, for me, the money goes first to safety. Schools and safety are the most important thing we have. My husband needed a paramedics not long ago, and they were there in 2 minutes. I said, that's why we live in Beverly Hills. And these are always reasons why I, as a council member, would make sure that these things are top priority.
And what new technology advancements would you hope to see in the coming years of our city?
Well, you know, they talked a number of years ago about fiber optics to the premises, and that, unfortunately, was a boondoggle of the current council that was not able to realize that. You know, because that was something they promised us by now, that we would all have this. They kept saying free internet and all of this. It didn't happen, and for whatever reason it didn't happen. That's a lack of management skills. So I think we need to see what actually went wrong there and why, you know, because we've put a lot of money into it already. So I think we have to go forward with that. But technologically, our city, you know, again, I was very impressed with some of the things the police chief was telling me that they're doing in the city right now. Again, these are things that impress me the most, that are most important to me, are public safety. So if we have any technological advances that we can use to enhance our public safety, that would be something that I would certainly look towards as an important thing to be behind.
And although Beverly Hills is a very small city, very close-knit, we have a lot of different landscapes. Oh, yeah. We have our beautiful flats, and we have our hilly areas and our commercial areas. How would you make sure that every area is attended to and everybody's looked out for?
Well, I think the important thing to look at in our city is we're 5.7 square miles, and we have such diversity in what our city has to offer in these 5.7 square miles. I've walked a lot of them. I've walked a lot knocking on people's doors, introducing myself. And the thing that I find most interesting is that the needs are different in different areas. I mean, you know, you and I talked before this about the hillside ordinance that I was instrumental in passing, and of course the basement ordinance, which is for the entire city, but primarily does help the hillside, is something that I co-authored. And that's an area that needed definite immediate help because of these oversized development projects that were, you know, causing safety issues for the community because of the amount of hauling and digging and other issues that were going on there. So that was one thing. But then I walk in the southeast, okay? And in the southeast, they have completely different needs, but nonetheless very important needs. People have needs, and they say to me, you know, we have cars, we can't park on our street at night, we can't park in front of our home at night. One woman was telling me recently, I have to go to Olympic Boulevard, south, wherever it was. She said she had to drive like 2 blocks south of where she lived because she was in the southeast. And she says, and I have no place. I have to park my car down there. So I said, we have to come up with we have a one-size-fits-all in very many ways in our general plan and in our city codes, and we have to go through those. And because of my planning background, I can look at those things and say, in this area, maybe they are allowed a little more hardscape in front of their home so they can park a car there. Then there's needs in the Southwest. They have different needs. They have cut-through traffic problems, more so than you find in other areas. And the flats have people complain to me, cars are racing around the streets. And so every different area has a different set of problems. And I think you have to be sensitive, which I am. I mean, the thing I always say is when I make a decision on the Planning Commission, the one thing I look at is how would this affect me if I lived next door? I always look at it from that prism, because if you don't have the sensitivity. You don't understand what these people are going through. And when people come to us and they say, oh, if you put this project in, it's going to cause this impact on my life, we try to find ways, and I try very hard to find ways to make it so that their impact is not that significant. And it works for the most part if you respect every person's needs. And, maybe I'm not the best friend of every developer in the city of Beverly Hills, but I always say I am not against development. I'm very pro-development. I'm not in favor of overdevelopment that impinges upon the rights of the people who live in the area by. And that's, I think, something that has to be understood.
And we just started our new decade. 2020 has just begun. Can you tell me what your outlook is for the next 10 years of Beverly Hills?
Well, look, Beverly Hills is going to be going through so many changes. And again, as I say, I tend to look at it from an optimistic perspective. We will be increasing housing. Whether we hit 3,100 is probably a pretty tough one to hit. But, if we make a good faith effort, I think this will be important in terms of changing, in terms of the makeup of our community. As our community is aging and we're not bringing enough young people into our community, that's a difficult thing. So we need to bring more young people, and we need to encourage the kind of business. I'd like to see businesses in our community that we haven't seen in many years. When I grew up, we had neighborhood theaters in our community. We didn't have to go anywhere if we wanted to have entertainment when we were kids growing up. We didn't, and another thing that's important is we have to look at the different areas and say not everybody can afford to shop on Rodeo Drive. Not everybody that comes to Beverly Hills, either that lives here or that comes here from other areas, both foreign and domestic, can shop on Rodeo Drive. We have to have businesses and activities that attract those people as well. And I think that is super important. I think we're going to go through a major issue with the redevelopment of La Cienega Park, which is going to be major. Now, I don't want to see it cost what they're telling us it's going to cost right now without a vote of the residents. Right now, the projected budget for this phenomenal project that they have in mind with a 6-story building or 5 or 6-story building and all the public spaces and the bridge that's going over, the initial cost estimate was $160 million. Well, I'm in business and I've been in construction, and whenever the initial estimate's there, you just kind of double it and say that's probably what it is. So roughly, let's say, $250 million, maybe $350 million. That's what we're talking about here. I would never, ever agree to that without an initiative of a vote of the people to go to our citizens and say, how much do you want to be indebted for this? Do you want a parcel tax for this? Do you want a bond to be floated for this? Do you want to increase our sales tax for this? There are ways of funding it, but I don't think it's fair for 5 people to make those decisions without getting the input from the community. So that's something I think is important.
And as my last question, I like to ask this to all my guests. What is the best advice you have ever received?
The best advice I have ever received. That is interesting. I think the best advice, I can't remember where it came from, but I think it was always just, if you have a goal, if you have a dream, never, ever stop until you achieve that dream. I think if I have to look in the recesses of my mind, I probably have always wanted to do this. And I took time to raise my family, care for elderly parents, the things that I had to do in the course of my life. And here I am at the moment. I am poised at the place where I am ready to be here, to serve our community, to work as hard as I can for the people of Beverly Hills, because it means so much to me. And I think that is the best advice I've ever received. Just keep going till you do it.
That's beautiful. So, Mrs. Gordon, thank you so much for joining me here today.
I really appreciate the opportunity.
And make sure to go out and vote on March 3rd. I'm Eva Danesh for KBEV 6. Thank you for watching.